Hello, I'm Jessie the Sleepy Koala and welcome to my final Bookmas video for this year. For this last video, I wanted to cap things out with my reading goals and TBR for 2022. To start things off, I wanted to talk about what I wanted to do reading-wise next year and goals and all that shebang. I don't want to stress myself out, basically. And that is what I told myself this year as well. I said I wanted to read more. I don't want to stress about reading a certain amount. I wanted to make it that fun hobby I do again because I had fallen back a bit from where I was a couple of years ago, where there was just so much joy in picking up a book and reading something and going into a new world. I wanted to have that again. I just needed to get back into the groove and get the practice for it. And I think I've done pretty well. I have read more this year than I have for quite a while since I started Sanderson's work, honestly. It did taper off after I had read The Cosmere a couple of times. And I've really enjoyed getting back into reading. I have found my love for it again. But also, I've enjoyed reading new things. And that is a big thing for me. I have always been a rereader. Even when I was younger, I didn't really want to read new things unless I had to, or because my friends were reading it, or because it was the next book in a series or something like that. I just wanted to reread. I liked what I liked, and I liked going into those worlds, and I liked the feeling of coming home to something that I get when I reread. It feels like this gentle warmth of coming home to a story and characters that I know and that I love. And I don't have to go through that emotional work of falling in love with a character that I do when I start a new story. And I find that really difficult, and it is very emotionally draining for me as well a lot of the time. But at the beginning of this year, I had the urge of trying new things. I wanted to actively read different books that weren't things that I had read a lot before. And I've done well with that. I've read a lot of books this year that were new books, and some of them were continuations of series. I have done some rereads this year as well, but I've also read a lot of new things, and I have tried to branch out from what I would previously read and read a few different things. Not necessarily into new genres, but just not reread the same things over and over again. I have branched out into anything else. So I've done very well with what I wanted to do this year. I have achieved what I wanted in 2021. 2022, I basically want to do the same thing. My main goal is I just want to keep gently branching out from things I have read to new things that I may love. And I want to try and push that a little bit further this time because I want to try romance in particular because I think I would really enjoy it. And also I'd love to read some more fairy tale retellings. But I don't want to rock the boat too much. So these are the two things that I'm going to try and focus on. But I'm not going to focus hard on them. I don't want to have any solid plan in place where I read a romance novel every month because that is destined for failure and I don't think I will enjoy it. But I do want to try and deliberately keep an eye out for romances that I might like. And when I do find them, just slot them in. And the same with fairy tale retellings. I have a couple at the moment and I would like to really read them. And I'll just slot them in at some point so that I get there, but I'm not stressing myself to try and do it. I don't want to lose that love of reading, and I don't want it to feel like it's becoming a chore. And I feel like if I push myself too hard to meet X goal or Y goal, then it might turn into a chore. And I don't want that. I want this to be the hobby that I love, that gives me joy and doesn't feel like work. I do think I'm going to set myself a book count though. I did it this year with no expectations of meeting it, and I have met it. I surpassed it by a number of books. I'm not completely sure how many because Goodreads doesn't count rereads towards the number of books you've read a year. It just counts the number of books, which is a little bit frustrating to me because I would like to know that number without having to go tally it myself. But this year I put down 50 books as what I wanted to read, which amounted to about 4 books a month. And if I didn't reach it, I didn't reach it. And I didn't particularly care. I just wanted something that I could aim for to keep me going. I didn't want it to be where I read a bunch in January and then burnt out. I wanted to have something to keep going with, to try and get to without the expectation or the stress of definitely having to get to it. So I'm going to do that again this year. And I'm going to set it at 50 again this year. And if I don't reach 50, that is entirely fine. If I do, great. But I need that thing that I can focus on to help me stay motivated. But at the same time, I think after reading for a year and falling in love with it, I don't really need that motivation as much anymore. I feel that self-motivation already to just pick up another book and to start reading it. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see if I reach 50. If I don't, I don't. If I do, I do. The one thing I do want to try and make sure I do this year, this is like the one more structured goal I have, is I want to do a written review for every book I read. And I started doing this year, just on a whim. Like initially I was just doing reviews for things that I wanted to do reviews for on Goodreads, but then I started doing it for every book. This was really helpful for 2 reasons. First is I started a booktube channel and started talking about books all the time, and it was really helpful to have something to fall back on so I knew what I wanted to say. Secondly, I have a terrible memory, like really, really terrible memory. Books that I read this year that I loved, I don't remember what happened in them. Like I don't. If it's a book that I've read multiple times, yeah, then I remember. But there are books that I read this year where I've had to go read the synopsis to figure out what I want to say about them in these videos. But the ones that I wrote reviews for really helped because it told me the points that mattered to me. And it helped give me that refresher of what I wanted to talk about and what was important to me and what I had picked up on the most in these books. So I really would like to continue that this year. There have definitely been times this year where I have put it off and put it off and put it off because they do take a long time, particularly the later ones that I've been doing, because some of the earlier ones are like a paragraph and that's it. It's like, I liked this book. Here are some general reasons. I'm done. And the further on throughout the year I got, the more detailed the reviews got. This wasn't deliberate. It just started happening. And that was very useful with me going back to look at what I've written and what I wanted to talk about. But at the same time, they started taking longer and longer to write. I remember with my King of Scars, A Rule of Wolves written reviews on Goodreads, I spent so long procrastinating those because I knew they were going to be essays. I had so much I wanted to talk about, and they were. And the same thing with my Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom reviews. But you know what was really helpful? Me writing those reviews, because then I knew what I wanted to talk about in my review videos, and that was so helpful. The one set structured goal I have for myself this year is to write a review for every book I read on Goodreads. This is a bit harder than some of the books that I've read, like The Sandman or manga, where they come in smaller volumes, and I think I'll just write it on one of them and do my entire thoughts. But I want to do a review for every one of them because they're so helpful, and because I have no memory of pretty much anything that I read after like a month or so. If I don't write it down, then I'm just not going to remember it. Like things like the Three Dark Crowns series, I really liked that series when I read it and then really hated the last book. But even though I loved the second and third book and I hated the last one, I don't remember what happened in them. I don't remember why I hated the last one. And I don't remember why I liked the second and third one. I wrote a review for the last one, so I can go back and I can figure it out. I didn't write a review for the second one. I think the second one was the best one in the series. I didn't write a review for it, so I have no idea why. I don't remember the plot. I know who the characters are, but that's about it. And I don't know why it was so good, but it was. So they're very, very helpful for me. But those are the goals that I have for 2022. They are very flexible. They are very soft because I don't want to put pressure on myself to lead to me finding this to be work and unenjoyable. Onto the books I want to read this year. I won't go too in detail with these, but firstly, I want to do a reread of the Harry Potter series. My husband and I want to do that together, and then we will do videos to go through what it's been like for us rereading them. I have not read them since I was in high school. I think he has not read them for maybe as long, so we want to see whether they hold up for us and whether the nostalgia helps make it through or whether we just crash and burn. We're very, very interested in it, and we will see how it goes. I want to do a bunch of fairy tale retellings and kind of other story retellings. The first is Target by Darci Cole, which is a Robin Hood gender-swapped retelling. Then we have Unbirthday by Liz Braswell, which is Alice in Wonderland story where it's set after Alice goes to Wonderland and now she has to go back to defeat the Red Queen again and save a child that she can see somehow. There's also What Once Was Mine, also by Liz Braswell. This is a Rapunzel retelling where instead of Rapunzel's hair healing, it hurts people and looks at how this affects her and people around her when she goes to see the magical light. Then we have Shades of Milk and Honey by Mary Robinette-Kowel. This is a Jane Austen retelling, but with magic. And I've never read Jane Austen, and I would like to read more romance, so this seems like a good way to have romance and magic. Next to books that I put into my Christmas wish video, there is The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J.Klune, where there is a social security officer who has to go to a magical orphanage, and it's apparently a very wholesome and delightful story about found family. Then we have The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, which follows Kiva, a healer in a prison who has to keep the rebel queen alive so she can go through a bunch of elemental trials. The next two are by the Green brothers, Hank and John Green. The first is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, which is a bunch of essays about things created by humanity and just looking at humanity in general. It sounds delightful. I'm not normally into nonfiction, but I would like to try it, and this seems like a really good way to start. Then we have A Beautifully Foolish Endeavour by Hank Green. This is the second book in the Carl series. I really liked the first book. I read it at the start of this year. I didn't actually realize the first book was science fiction until I started it, but it's a good look at how social media affects things, and I was quite fascinated by it. The next three I actually know nothing about, except that I have heard the names, and I have heard the descriptions at some point. They sounded interesting, and I've forgotten what the descriptions are. There's 3 Parts Dead by Max Gladstone. I believe this is about zombies? Maybe. It has an awesome cover, and it did sound really cool. Then we have Jade City by Fonda Lee. People have raved about this book, and that just piques my interest. And also there was an Illumicrate deal, I think it was, where you got all 3 books in pretty covers, and I bought them. So now that I've bought them, I'm going to read them. Then there is The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first book in the Inheritance trilogy, and something I've been wanting to read for ages. I read the 5th season 2 years ago and loved it. I thought it had incredible world building, incredible characters, and I really enjoyed the plot. I have wanted to read more N.K. Jemisin ever since, and I have heard fantastic things about the Inheritance trilogy, so that's the next one I want to read. The last is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a book that I have owned for a while now, and I've just never read. I've watched the movie. I've loved the movie. I would really like to read the book. I've just never gotten around to it. So seeing as I own it, I think I should give it a read and not just let it sit on my shelf. Those are the books that I would like to read in 2022. Don't know when, just at some point. The only one that I kind of have a timeline for is the Harry Potter reread, which probably summer of 2022, because then my husband doesn't have a stressful semester of teaching because he is a teacher. There will be many, many, many more books that I will read next year, which I am very excited for. I can't wait to get into new stories and meet new characters and just fall in love with new books and different books. Let me know in the comments what your reading goals are, what books you want to read next year. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you next time. Bye!